Losi, and I'm with the Into Wisdom group, and we're doing a series on Zoom fatigue. The part one, we took a look at basically defining our terms. What is it? What is Zoom fatigue? What causes it? And is it real? And these videos were spurred by several articles that have been published in the last few months about what causes Zoom fatigue. And you can find them in Psychology Today and in APA, the American Psychological Association. Also, CNN and other magazines, newspapers have covered this as well. So I wanted to dive in and explore not only the causes, but what we can do about it. So the first one was all about what is it, what causes it, and is it real? They also outlined the four causes four things that they think cause Zoom fatigue: excessive close-up eye gaze, cognitive load, what they call the all-day mirror effect, and then constraints on physical mobility. Part two was about excessive close-up eye gaze. And today I want to talk about cognitive load. So first of all, let's define our terms, make sure we're talking about the same thing. Zoom fatigue describes the tiredness, worry, and stress, or burnout, that's associated with the overuse of virtual platforms for communication, meetings, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of people who come after spending a long time in virtual meetings. Zoom is just a convenient term, and these apply to all the different platforms. But Zoom fatigue is this general feeling of tiredness that happens after a long day staring at a screen. So let's take a look at cognitive load. What is cognitive load? It just refers to your brain capacity, the amount of working memory that you're using to accomplish something. And the articles really focus on the psychological burden and really the nonverbal burden that's placed when you're in this platform. So when we're talking about it, we know that nonverbal cues they're amazing how we communicate in person. It's incredibly fluid and almost unconscious, and yet it's really, really complex how we send and receive nonverbal cues. Well, things have changed when we go to a virtual platform. The complexity is still there, but because of the way that we're framed in the picture, because of the way that we're communicating, first of all, we feel this distance to people. So we tend to overdo our nonverbal cues. As a matter of fact, I think we speak 70% louder. You tend to raise your voice a lot more than you need to in a regular situation in a meeting. So we tend to overextend, over gesture, because we think we need to overdo sending nonverbal cues. So that puts strain on the working memory. We takes up more capacity to do that. Another piece that happens is that we aren't receiving the cues that we normally would get. Normally, when we're in a room, we're looking at the entire body. We're looking at their body orientation. We're looking at their legs. We're also able to better read glances. So when you're in a room and somebody says something, you look across and somebody looks, you get that look. Well, here you can't tell what that means because everybody's in a different place in the gallery view. So where cognitive load is increased because we're oversending, we're working really hard to receive those cues. Another piece that adds to our cognitive load is just the technical strain. When things go wrong, when you glitch, when you can't hear or see somebody, you click the wrong button. How many of you stress out when you start speaking and everybody yells at you, "You're on mute"? Those are all things that add to our cognitive load. So I want to show you kind of what's the impact of increased cognitive load. I kind of made a really non-technical graph here, but it plays its role here. So as you increase the cognitive load, let me get that here. As you increase the cognitive load, then your effectiveness goes down. And as you reach a certain point where you start to make secondary mistakes, meaning that secondary tasks get dropped. That's when you're forgetting to, you need to take yourself off mute, but you forget. I think about in terms of, I always forget to either share the screen or stop sharing the screen. But as your cognitive load, as all these other stressors pile up, and your working memory reaches capacity, you start to make more and more mistakes. And that's the impact of increased cognitive load due to your presence in the virtual world. All these different things add up. Now, well, let's talk a little bit about what you can do. So for participants, what can you do to manage the cognitive load? One thing I think is really important is check your tech before you get online. These different platforms update. And sometimes when they update, you lose some, they either change some of the settings or you lose some of the capacity that's out there. So make sure that you check your tech before you get in the meetings. Make sure that you have the most recent updates, and then just making sure it's always a good idea to get on a little bit early to make sure your tech is working. What else can you do? Explore the platform. The better you know the tech, the less stress you'll be when you're asked to do things in it. So just take some time and play in the platform. Get to know whichever platform you use, whether it's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, all the different platforms that are out there, WebEx. Explore what they're doing, and as a participant, you'll experience less stress and less of that cognitive load the more familiar you are with the platform. It's a skill set. Reading nonverbal cues is a skill set that we can develop. So understand the limits of the new context and that it will take you time to catch up. And that will reduce your stress about it, because when we think we're supposed to be able to do something that we can't, that takes up some of that cognitive load. So understand the new context and start to practice and read. The other thing that I can suggest, check perceptions. Ask others, what's your take on a topic or situation, and test it out with people just to see how accurate you are with your read and with other people's read. So checking perceptions. As a facilitator, what can I do to help participants lighten that cognitive load? One is to remind them to check their tech and create space in a meeting. I sign on usually at least 15 minutes early so that if anybody wants to get in there and check things out, I can help them with it. The other another way to do that is build in time to explore the tech that you're going to be using for your presentation or for your facilitation. I usually try and build in a soft opening as people come in where we try out the different tools that we're going to be using during that session. I need to understand the limits of the virtual context for communication, verbal and nonverbal, and consider these as I design my program, as I design my topic. And creative environments can build those verbal and nonverbal skills, and give them time to ask questions, increase the interpersonal trust so that people can assume best intent by asking people to introduce themselves, greet people by name as they come in, create opportunities for people to hear and tell their stories so that they build those connections. And another piece is build in smaller group interactions to encourage conversations. All these things can help people manage the cognitive load so that they can stay at their peak effectiveness when they're in these this new virtual platform. And all these things can help us at least manage, if not diminish, the Zoom fatigue that's out there.